5 of the biggest myths that you've probably heard about retirement, or some of the biggest lies or possibly half-truths about retirement. Now, I've been retired for about 6 months. And by the way, hey, welcome back. It's another beautiful day. Oh, the sun is shining. It's wonderful out here. You can see the leaves are changing colors and we're getting cool. This morning's about +2. But you know what? It's that time of year and it's cooling off. And as you can see, I'm dressed more for this type of weather. But there's a lot of people that are constantly naysaying, trying to say, well, what are you going to do? You're not going to be useful in retirement. Why do you want to retire? Well, the short answer is because I can. The long answer is because I should. And so let's get into this conversation. And realistically, a lot of these things that people say and myths that are thrown out there are due because of sometimes financial constraints, sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's in denial, sometimes there's truths in there too. So let's just get right to it. The first thing, or the first factoid that people refer to and say, essentially I consider it a myth, and in many cases it's a lie, at least it was for me, is I love my job. I love my job. I love my job. I love my job. Well, that's a phrase you often hear. Why people don't want to retire? Because they love their job. And while there are a small sliver of the population that legitimately loves their job, there is a small percentage of the population maybe that, owns their own business. And I don't necessarily consider that the same thing as a job, because as a business owner, small business owner, you can, if you do it right, you can scale up and down your time investment in that business. And quite often, if you're playing it right and you trust good people, then often you can delegate. And so it's not quite the same. Working a business arguably can have some serious stress behind it. But if you're at that age already, you're later in your years, 50s, 60s, and you're talking about maybe retiring and you own your own small business, there's a good possibility you're fairly well established already. And in which case you've got the inertia, momentum, and really it's just more about making the move, making the switch, and maybe delegating some of those duties. So I love my job. Well, for me, I thought I loved my job. I did like the work I did. And, for many years, being in the electrical business, being under, high voltage equipment, doing maintenance, doing calculations and studies and analysis, and, living in the world of arc flash was always very interesting and exciting for me. But, the core work itself was always fun and interesting. It's often the travel, sometimes you'd go out and travel. There's something about your job, most often than not, there's things about your job that you don't really love. For my job, it was being on the road a lot in my early years, meant I was away from home, and quite often it would be a Sunday night, I'd have to hit the road and head back up somewhere out in the sticks somewhere. It'd be a 5-hour drive or something. And quite often I started to build this anxiety and this anguish and resentment almost to the work, because it compromised my life. It compromised my lifestyle. And as soon as your job puts a foot in front of your feet and trips you up like that, you start to resent your job. You hate your job. It creates anxiety and stress. And that was starting to do that for me. So, years ago, I was working on the road a lot. Okay, great. I moved on. I changed that up a little bit. I found a job closer to home, and I was home every night. But then naturally you're closer to the heartbeat of that organization, and you're closer to the epicenter, and you're also closer to the politics. And so I was doing well in my early years, and I moved up into sort of more of a leadership role, and then it became less about what I knew and how to do it, and more about managing people and politics. And then the stress just kept building and building and building. And while I started out loving my job, I certainly didn't end up that way. And I know there's a lot of people that live that way. They get through it. They tolerate their job. They feel, yeah, I can live with this. This isn't bad. I enjoy my work. I think what they enjoy is the regular, predictable paycheck more than they love their job, right? So if it's really just about the finances, give yourself a kind of a second check on that, because realistically, our time is ticking. Think about that hourglass with the sand pouring down the center of the glass. Every day that goes by, you've lost another, X amount of sand grains that have gone through there, and you can't get them back. You can't turn that hourglass upside down. It's done. So you can earn as much money as you think you need, but there is a point of diminishing returns. And as soon as I left my job, even from a job that initially I loved, and a lot of people do say, well, I still love my job, and I have a great boss, and I have freedoms, and I have all this. And there are those people that have all of that. My question is ultimately, even for those people that even do actually like their work, do you like anything more? Wouldn't you rather be, even if it's just going for a long bike ride in a nice, river valley, the grass is green, you smell that fresh dew, riding your bike at, 8:30 in the morning and sailing down these bike trails, or you like to go for a walk, or maybe go for that round of golf with those folks that already just retired last year. I'd much rather be doing things like that than work. Even if I enjoyed my work, I'd much rather be doing things that I like to do. Not to mention stress dropped off drastically. I don't have those deliverables. I don't have to host those performance meetings. I don't have to have those performance conversations. I don't have to, be political in the way I deliver a message to peers around me. I don't have to watch what the boss is saying or try to read between the lines, because they're very passive aggressive and they're big on just dropping nuggets and kind of let you walk away and sort of ponder and not totally sure what they meant by that. Nobody wants that. Reports, deliverables, deadlines, forget it. Meetings, I threw that phone out, don't care. So yes, the stress levels drop from like a 9.5 down to a 1. Sure, there's other thoughts, there's other things that go on in life. There's always a little bit of stress, and that's what keeps you going. But I'll tell you, the job, and I would bet dollars to donuts, even if you say you love your job, you'd probably love doing something a little different. The next myth that I believe is when people say, I need more money. Well, that's often the truth. Absolutely. In today's day and age, where you have situations with rising inflation, rising cost of living, increased taxation, and wages that aren't seeming to follow suit, you have bad political policies, and it all is reaching to dip deeper into your pocket. Social Security, things like that, CPP, are all looking to be scaled back with time and age. Old age security, old age pension, all these factors, they're not giving you more, they're giving you potentially less. So there is certainly some validity to people saying, I need more money. But what you'll find often when you start getting into retirement, you're hustling, There's those years where you're really moving and shaking and you're really earning a lot, right? You're kind of peaking. Most people peak in their careers in the 40s and then early 50s, kind of late 50s. And then they sail off into retirement or start prepping or level off, and they've sort of plateaued at that point. So your 40s, 50s are typically your peak earning years. And that's where a lot of people just generally are pushing hard. So then if you retire at, say, 55, there's this perception that you need to maintain that standard of living. So you always think you need a little bit more money. I need more. You've been working and living off of $120,000 a year for the last 10 years, and all of a sudden you're going to cut that in half. Do you think that's possible? It is possible. You have to manage your lifestyle a little bit. You certainly have to manage where your costs and expenditures. Do you need to buy that new car? Maybe not, because you're not putting on 20,000 miles every year now. You're not doing that anymore. And actually what you are doing is sitting around, maybe going for drives or bike rides or walks, and you're not putting the miles on your car. You don't wear a vehicle out, and you certainly don't need to worry about getting that new car anytime soon, because your 15,000 mile a year on your vehicle might turn into a 3,000, 4,000 mile a year. Okay. So you're going to scale back on fuel costs. You're going to scale back on the fact that either eliminate or not buy that car that you really probably don't need. And with today's car prices, why bother? Houses, hopefully by that time in life, if you're not done your mortgage, and a lot of people aren't, I understand, you're either getting close, or if you're in one of those scenarios where you've bought into, one of those high dollar margin areas or high dollar markets, Vancouver's, Toronto's, Los Angeles, some of these areas that have a significant cost to buy in, and all of a sudden you're only maybe halfway into your mortgage, well, maybe it's time to downsize. Maybe it's time to rid yourself of that big debt. Nothing's permanent anyway. This thought of, hey, this is my house, I got to pay it down. It's going to take me 25, 30, 40, 100 years, whatever. I'm going to pay it down, then it's mine. That's not really relevant, because once we all go and we pass, chances are everything's going to be tossed, sold, given away, including the house will probably be either auctioned, sold, sent back to market. And by the time, 100 years, 50 years from now, your house will be owned by somebody else. There'll be a new family in there, and nothing is actually permanent. So the idea of getting locked into the sense that I need to pay this down, I need to stay in this house, it's really kind of pointless. So why not put yourself into a position that's a little financially more secure and stable, downsize, eliminate the debt, get rid of that mortgage payment, and maybe move into a smaller, there's little, I don't want to say townhouses or condos like over there, but certainly there's options. You could even buy a smaller detached home. There's lots of options. Depends on what you're coming from, where you're headed to. You don't necessarily need all that debt. So that's the idea. Do you need more as well? I already mentioned you're coming from a world and you've got this mindset. You're making $120K a year or more, and then all of a sudden you're into retirement. Well, the first few years, you're probably still very energized. Maybe your spouse is going to retire soon too. And then you want to spend the next few years traveling. Absolutely. So you're always planning for that. And your financial advisor is likely going to set that up, put it in the program, crunch the numbers, look at it and say, hey, this is what you need to retire. You need $80,000 a year for the next 25 years or 20 years. The reality is it's actually more of a sliding scale. And by the time you're kind of into your late 60s, early 70s, you're not traveling as much like you initially thought you might. You're not buying a new car. Hopefully your home expenses are kind of done with. And even though the cost of living in COLA, maybe there have been adjustments in the initial calculation by their financial advisor, the bottom line is most of that is pointless, because as you get older, you actually spend less. There's lots of studies showing that. Think about what an 80-year-old or a 78-year-old person is doing. Are they going out there spending? Are they as busy? Are they as active? Are they dialed into doing all these things, spending all this money, doing all this travel? Way less than you would be if you're at 58. So people slow down. They get tired. They get bored of doing the same old thing. Even travel can get very monotone. So if you can believe it, if you're crunching your numbers, not to sell yourself short, because nobody ever wants to come up short in retirement. That's probably one of the worst stressors. But if you run the numbers and you say, look, here's the worst case scenario. But if you want to draw that out a little longer, or you want to make a decision of whether you can retire a couple years earlier or not, it might be a decision to say, look, I do believe there's a sliding scale. I do believe that we can trim costs down a wee bit as time goes on. Maybe every 5 years, you scale down 10%. Whatever that looks like, that's your financial advisor. I'm not here to give the advice on that. All I know is statistically, as people age, they slow down, they do less, they take less interest in spending money, and they basically just do the simple things. Sitting in a rocking chair, hopefully by the time you're 78, you can still go for those walks with a puppy and go out for those little bike rides. And it's the simple things in life that matter more as you age than it is, having all that extra, swag and jewelry and cars and big houses and boats. Who cares at that point? So at the end of the day, some people believe you need more money. And if it means it comes at the expense of working an extra 6 or 7 years to build up that nest egg. Like, I understand some people are, okay, I've got 2.5 years and then my mortgage is finished. Yeah, to me, that feels like you're so close. Work it off, get it done, move it on. But there's lots of cases where people are too much in the middle of debt. You might as well just clear the plate, simplify, detoxify, get rid of your credit card debts, get rid of hopefully you don't have student loan debts, but you never know. And definitely mortgages and car loans and all that stuff should be simplified or eliminated. And then it's not such a big deal to have more money. So another myth is one where people say, I have unlimited time. I have lots of time in retirement to enjoy retirement. I'm going to keep working for now because there's lots of time. I'm not worried about quitting right now. Lots of time to do all the things I want when I get into retirement. But if you treat yourself right, that could be true. If you're living well, eating well, exercising, you could have lots of time to enjoy. The problem is, as a lot of people age, they get less interested in running the marathons. They get less interested in going for those 2-hour bike rides. They get less interested in doing those things that are more active. And quite often, eating habits aren't necessarily, the best either. So unfortunately, there's a more likeliness of, health, I don't want to say deteriorating, because that's a natural fact of aging, and deterioration and decline is all part of it. But that's the fact. That's the reality. As you age, if you don't take care of yourself, you will have far less time than you actually think of quality time where you can go out and actually truly enjoy retirement. Because if you haven't been looking after yourself and you are putting off retirement, by the time you retire in your mid-60s, we know that, a lot of the chronic illnesses start to come in the mid-60s, that by the time that hits, if you haven't looked after yourself, there's a good possibility you won't be in such physical shape where you even want to retire or do anything different. You're just going to want to sit around. It might mean more time in a hospital room, or even, and it's not even just you, it could be you or your spouse. So you remember, it's all about the lowest common denominator. It's all about the lowest common denominator here. And realistically, if either one of you has a chronic illness, and now there's many trips a week to visit doctors and clinics, well, that's pretty much taken all that free time out of the window now, hasn't it? So the longer you wait, the higher probability of encountering a world-changing or a life-changing event, not world-changing, could be a world, your world, that it's just really going to eliminate the opportunity to enjoy retirement. So it's a sad state, but that's just what it is. People that just continually put off thinking they have all this time in retirement, when in reality, that time may not be the quality time that you're hoping for. May not have this, you have this vision of doing all these fun things as you retire, walking on the beach, holding hands with your spouse, going on these nice journeys and these vacations, and playing with the grandkids out in the park with the soccer ball. Trust me, as you slow down, and I'm feeling it too, going out and kicking the soccer ball around with the kids in the field is not as easy. You can't keep up anymore like we once did. So the longer you wait, the less of that quality time you're actually going to have. So yeah, it is pretty much a myth. Another myth that a lot of people refer to retirement as the destination, not the journey. See, unfortunately, a lot of people see it that way. They see they work for 40 years, 30 years, and then they hit this point and they say, poof, time to turn the lights off. It's time to chill. I'm going to sleep. No one's going to tell me I'm going to wake up when I need to wake up. I don't need to do anything. I want to do nothing. And that's quite often the attitude that a lot of people do have, or this perception that you sail into retirement thinking, hey, and I've actually had viewers reach out to me and say, look, I'd much rather be employed, work till the end, be productive, not have the stress of know where the money is coming from, living life, buying the toys, doing the trips, buying the big house, doing all those things, and do that till the end. And they basically said that being retired is being lazy. Ouch, that kind of hurts, because I truly don't see retirement as the destination. It's not the destination. It's the destination from a phase in your life. It's the beginning of a new phase. And whilst there are some people that get thrust into retirement because of health issues, maybe they're put on some long-term disability and then they sail off into retirement from there. They get bridged off into retirement because they hit that age and the long-term disability, the employer wants to cut their ties. And I've seen this, I've seen people in that world for sure, where they were sent into retirement because of health issues, and they just transitioned, and their last 10 years was very unproductive from the employer's perspective. And trust me, I know I've heard these conversations in the background when upper leaders are referring to those people as being not productive, never really being around, so they're not really helping the company. And I've heard the talk. I think a lot of us have probably experienced some of those discussions of other coworkers maybe in similar situations. The reality is, while there are abusers of those situations, the vast majority of people that are actually on long-term disability are there because there's a legitimate reason. They have physical chronic problems, a heart condition, a blood condition, extreme anxiety, and I've seen people like that. There's a lot of situations that would derive that kind of push people and doctors to say, look, this person really isn't suitable for work, at least at this point. And so I've seen it. I know this. I know people like that. So there are cases where a lot of people are sent into retirement under the pretense of health. Okay, but the flip side is many people who choose to retire early, or in my case, kind of turfed into retirement just a hair early, which in my case, it was absolutely perfect. And not everybody's scenario is going to land like that. But the point is, when you retire, it's the beginning of something new. It is its own journey. See, everybody sees life as a journey. You go to school, you get your degree, you go to your schooling, then you meet somebody, you date, you get married, you have kids, you buy the house, the dog, the picket fence, and everybody just kind of does their thing and just continues on. And that is a journey. That's life journey. And there's all kinds of ups and downs during that journey. We know that. But just because you're saying, I'm done. See, there's this thing that they like to instill in your head. And I'm not buying it. I'm out of that. That's the corporate grind. That's the system. That's people. That's the process that wants you to keep feeding the beast with tax money, keep pumping money into the system. And if you're retired, you're pulling out of it eventually. So they don't want you pulling out of it. They want you putting money in. So there's so much propaganda that says keep working, or people are living longer, or people are living healthier. People, we should be extending the retirement ages. That's absolutely bung. That's absolutely ludicrous. And retirement, in my mind, is just the end of that phase. It doesn't mean you retire from life, because if you just retired for life, you just dig me a hole. At 55, at 60, 65, I'll just walk into the hole, throw some dirt on me, we'll call it a day. But that's not how I'd see it. I see it's a whole new time to actually enjoy, probably a better time. Because now I could spend more time with my kids, my wife, doing some of those other things I like to do. And if I do it early enough, like I did it at 53, which I know a lot of people, while you were launched out, that's fine. I was going to pull the pin at 55 anyway. So realistically, the sooner you do it, the sooner and the more of that quality time you will get to enjoy. And so this is a new journey of exploring some of your other interests, maybe some new hobbies, maybe meet some new people, maybe do a little bit of travel in there. And it doesn't mean you have to spend all your hard-earned dollars on travel, but just it gives you the freedom to do all those things without having the expectation set by some extremely large-headed boss that's always got their thumb on your forehead with asking for deliverables. Nah, that's not a life. That is not a life. That's not a life for me, and I know it's not a life for a lot of you out there. A lot of you are doing it because, again, you want to set yourself up financially. I totally get it. And, my wife and I, we've got a plan, and, you have to think about it. You have to plan it out. You have to have sort of something in place. You have to check all the boxes and all those things from a financial perspective, from a timing, from a logistics and all of that to make it work. You can't just go in haphazard. You can, but as I mentioned in another video, where some people, they just like drop everything, sell everything off and buy an RV and travel around and live off the grid. So, that's an option too. But the bottom line is, it's a new journey. It's a whole new series of events that you can explore, things that you can get interested in, some things that may be new to you, and maybe you just want to expand on some things that are old hat, but you just want to do them better. In my case, I do a little extra YouTubing, kind of build a channel, make it a little bit more interesting, this channel here is really derived to discuss some of kind of the inner workings, the demons, if you will, about retirement and how people feel and think about retirement and some of the attitudes about retirement. And clearly, as per a couple of viewers I had there, they basically kind of imply that if you are retired, you're lazy. Absolutely on the contrary. I see getting in the zone in your long-term chronic corporate job, working there for 25 years, sitting there staring at that like a zombie at the screen. I could argue all day that that's lazy, and that's easy. People default there. Once you land the job, the fight is over for a lot of people, and they just sit there and grind it out for 25 years. That's lazy. That's unmotivated. Now, we've all been there. I've been there too. But all I'm saying, just for argument's sake, that we all make our choices, and the choice to retire early is a choice in investment in me. It's an investment in me, investment in my wife and kids and the family, investment in my mental health, investment in life. Because working, sitting there hating myself, hating who I was, hating the fact that watching people compromise integrity and safety all around me didn't inspire confidence. And it just burned me, because that's not who I am. And to see that go on round and around and around, it just burned me. So here I am, and all I'm saying is retirement is, in fact, not just the destination. It should really be the journey, a journey of its own. And if you play that way, then it can be a really, really great journey. So that's how I see it. And another one, very related to the other one that I mentioned, where you need more money. Another one I want to mention is I will spend more in retirement. The fact is, you generally won't. In most cases, people spend less, they scale down, and they're likely going to spend less in retirement than they are in their day-to-day lives. Remember, I already mentioned this. People are buying cars, miling out vehicles, taking their kids, because at that age, a lot of their little ones are maybe going to sports and soccer and hockey and piano lessons and all these things that cost money. But as you get closer to retirement, what you'll find is usually your offspring are usually older, and a lot of those things, those costs, those expenses start going away. And I know a lot of people are, well, but then we got to pay for their wedding, and we got to pay for their university degree, and we got to... If you play your cards right, and in my opinion, if you raise the kids properly, like, I'm not saying I'm certainly by no means perfect either, and there's a lot of things I could have probably done a little bit differently. But if you raise them right, what I find is kids often will sort of take that level of accountability. See, I'm tongue twisted already. Accountability, and they'll earn their way. I can't tell you how many that I've seen come out of high school, university, get that job, work the summer, pay for the schooling, and go on like that. And a lot of it, if you plan, again, like in Canada, they have things like the RESP, for example, Registered Education Savings Plan, and you can invest money from a younger age. So it's like RRSP is retirement, but RESP is, education. So if you play your cards right, and this is all part of the plan, which I keep speaking about, like when you set out in life at younger years, you're not thinking at 25 about retirement, but you do know it's a thing, and you got to expect it at some level. Now, it doesn't mean you grind out and put everything into that. You've got to live life, and we've all lived life, and we've all done things and spent money in foolish ways, and Lord knows I have. But realistically, if you start going through life, just know that someday I'm going to have some expenses along the way here. I'm going to have some expenses along the way. We better put a little bit aside over on these bank, take a few dollars out every check, put it in this account over here in anticipation for retirement. Don't know what that looks like yet, but let's start putting some money aside. Then as well, for, once you start having little ones, then what I find is that sort of prompts you to say, hey, you know what? Why don't we just start putting a little money? Let's open this RESP account, or some other bank account that maybe, with a bit of an interest rate that can earn a couple of dollars along the way. Why don't we just start putting money in there a little bit? Now, that's all in the premise that you have enough to do that, because I know, again, it's easier said than done sometimes. A lot of people in the cost of living. I'll be the first to admit, I'd love to live in a city like Vancouver. Vancouver's arguably one of the most beautiful cities in the world, not just Canada, in the world. But I don't live there. Because why? The cost of housing is absolutely bananas. Taxation is absolutely bananas. You've got HST, PST, GST. You've got all these things, luxury taxes. You've got expensive homes. Basically, it's a city, unless you're a millionaire many times over, there's no point in even trying it. So that's what I'm saying. If you find yourself in an area, it might be worth considering. Now, I didn't move here from there, but I've also thought, oh, it'd be nice to move there one day. Well, no, after you do a bit of a, your own little personal market analysis, you realize that a lot of these places are just not affordable. So then how do you stretch your dollar a little further so you can put a little money away for the kids, so you can do some of those things for retirement? Work a little harder in your early years, which is what I've talked about before. Grind it out, take the overtime when it's available, push, side hustle, side jobs. If somebody's asking you to work on the weekend here, I'll give you an extra $1,000 if you help me wire my garage. Do those things. And then at the end of it all, if you put that money away and don't just whiz it away at the bar, then you'll find yourself in a position when you're later in life, because you haven't spent it on a high cost of living like Vancouver. I'd rather stay in Alberta. The winters are a little cold, but look, we're in the middle of October and it's still gorgeous out here. So for the most part, you've got a couple of months of severe weather here, and then a couple months of sloppiness, and the rest is actually not bad. So all that for the cost of living, where I can buy a house here for $450 versus the same house in Vancouver might cost me $1.8 million. It's clearly a lot of it's decision making along the way and how you set your logistics up. Now, I was born here, but I would easily move. I'm still thinking about moving. And now, if anything, I'm thinking about moving for different reasons, because now the entire country is under taxation envelope that is so choking. And I'm really waiting more for the what happens on the political side. But realistically, you gotta think about what you need to make yourself, put yourself in that position. I know so many people, I'll just share this little tidbit. My wife's Portuguese, okay? Her parents immigrated and went through that big, long process that took, months and years to actually transition. But they did that 50 years ago. They immigrated to Canada 50 years ago. And one could make all kinds of arguments that where they came from was 10 times nicer than it is here. But when they moved here, it was so cheap to live in Canada. Taxes were low, land was plentiful, and people were friendly. And this was the place to be. That's why you saw this massive influx in those days. 50 years ago, huge influx. Particularly, I know a lot of people, Portuguese, Italians, Ukrainians, all kinds of people moving in here, because at the time things weren't as great over there, and so they were moving here. Well, they made the move. So that's all I'm saying, is sometimes you've got to knock yourself out of your comfort zone, be willing to take that big step, and if it puts yourself in a better lifestyle, a better financial position, or just gives you the life you're looking for. I mean, let's put it this way. I'm basically Ukrainian, okay? If my ancestors didn't move to Canada many moons ago, 3 generations ago, I could have been one of those in the middle of that battle. So, I mean, it's just, we all do things. We try to do the best for ourselves. We try to make our lives as good as we can, and try to live our lives in the best way that we can. So how did we get so off the beaten path in terms of retirement talk? It's all just about being able to afford it and living the lifestyle, or seeking the lifestyle, and early investments, harder working early years in life just puts you in that place where you don't need as much to live. So that's really the bottom line. And those are some of the myths. I just wanted to share it with each and every one of you. And I do thank each and all of you, really, for helping me build this channel. It's absolutely amazing because it gives me an opportunity to really talk and express myself in a way that so many people are scared to. So many people just don't like talking about these kind of things. They don't like talking about feelings. People don't like to talk about, their finances. People don't like to talk about relationships like openly on an open forum. People like to stay anonymous, and there's a good reason for that. But I just also like to expand and just say, look, I do appreciate all of you, each and every one of you viewers coming in every single day to watch, participate, drop comments, share some of your stories too. And we've all had those hard luck stories, with loss and ups and downs in life. And I do appreciate the sharing of stories from all of you. And again, hey, it's a beautiful Tuesday morning, right after Thanksgiving here in Canada. Sun shining, the leaves are falling. Right now it's clearly getting time. Winter is rolling around the corner, and we're hearing next week we may even see some the S word. Anyway, hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.